On an early autumn morning, as the trees in Golden Gate Park began to turn a deep shade of crimson, a middle-aged man walked slowly along a path blanketed with fallen yellow leaves. The breeze was light, brisk, but his mind felt even colder. His hands were buried deep in the pockets of his trench coat, and his contemplative gaze lingered on the parents playing with their children near the playground. His name was Richard Hamilton, 52 years old, chairman of a long-standing real estate company in San Francisco. On paper, he was a successful man. Wealth, reputation, power, he held it all. But in this moment, standing in the midst of a bustling park, he felt more lost than ever. A man with no children, no wife, no family to come home to after a long day. 7 years ago, he divorced the woman who had been by his side for over a decade for a reason he had never been able to say out loud. She couldn't have children. At a lavish birthday party at the Ritz Hotel, a place where people usually raised glasses in celebration, Richard spoke words of parting. He didn't yell, didn't insult. He was just cold. "You'll never give me a child who carries the Hamilton name." That sentence didn't just end a marriage. It ended the part of him that was still human. Since that day, he had never found peace again. He tried to bury it in work, in nameless relationships. But at night, when the ticking of the clock echoed through the living room, he would find himself wondering, was I right? Or did I throw away the most precious thing in my life for the obsession of carrying on my bloodline? And then, one day, while walking through the park by chance, he saw something that made his entire world crumble. A woman with a familiar gaze, kneeling to tie the shoelaces of 2 young twin boys. Her hair was tousled gently in the wind, but that soft smile, he could never forget it. It was Anna, his ex-wife, and the 2 boys looked exactly like childhood echoes of himself. In that instant, everything inside Richard froze. The past, the regret, and a shiver ran down his spine like a lightning strike. One question roared in his mind. Could it be I was completely wrong? The following afternoon, as the golden hue of sunset washed over San Francisco like honeyed light, Richard returned to Golden Gate Park, as though an invisible thread was pulling him there. He didn't know why. He only knew that the image of Anna and the 2 boys hadn't left his mind since that fateful moment. He sat on a stone bench near the playground, holding a now cold paper cup of coffee, his eyes constantly scanning every movement around him. His heart pounded with a heavy rhythm, nervous, remorseful in emotion he had avoided for the past 10 years. And then, as if fate were testing him, Anna appeared. He wore a simple cream-colored sweater, her hair tied back neatly, holding the hands of 2 twin boys. Her frame was small, but there was an unshakable steadiness in the way she moved. The boys chattered excitedly, asking their mother something, while she knelt to button up the coat of the younger one. From a distance, Richard could clearly see the gentleness in every gesture, a quality he had never truly appreciated when she was still by his side. He stood up and walked slowly toward them. Each step felt like treading over fragments of memories that had never quite healed. Anna. The name escaped him, barely a whisper, yet it made her startle and turn around. Their eyes met. That moment stretched on like an entire lifetime, contained in a single glance. She said nothing. No smile, no frown, only a silence that asked plainly, "Why are you here?" "I happened to be passing by." "Didn't expect to see you," Richard said, trying to steady his voice, though his eyes betrayed the storm inside him. "Did you?" Anna replied softly. She turned to tell the boys to go play a little longer, then faced him again, her gaze calm, yet veiled with an old pain that hadn't fully faded. "There, your children?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Anna nodded, not avoiding the truth. "Yes, Carl and Oliver. They're almost 6 now." His heart skipped a beat. "They look like me." There was no accusation in his words, only acknowledgement that he knew, that he understood. Anna drew a deep breath, then spoke slowly, as if she'd rehearsed these words in her mind for years. "You left me during the final phase of my infertility treatment. I didn't tell you because I didn't think you'd stay even if there was hope. And when I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to tell you. But then I thought, you left because you wanted a woman who wasn't broken. I didn't want to beg for kindness." Richard stood frozen. Every word she spoke was like a needle driven straight into his chest. In his blind anger and obsession with legacy, he had turned his back not just on a wife, but on his own children. Children who never got the chance to call him dad. "I don't deserve," he whispered, eyes glassy, fixed on the two boys playing in the grass. "I don't expect anything from you, Richard," Anna said. Her voice wasn't cold, but it was devoid of longing. "Our life, me and the boys, it's simple, but it's peaceful. They have a mother who loves them, friends. A healthy life. They don't need someone who'll show up, only to disappear again." Richard turned to her, his voice low but earnest, gaze full of plea. "I know I can't undo the past. But if there's a chance, no matter how small, I want to be there for them. Not as your ex-husband, but as a father. If you'll allow it." Anna looked at him for a long time. Then she replied gently but firmly, "Richard, you can be a friend to them. But remember this, love is built over time, not born from regret." And then she turned, calling the boys back, leaving Richard standing in the park, at the very place where, for the first time, he realized that what he once believed was lost might still be a chance to make things right, if he still had time. A few weeks after that fateful encounter in Golden Gate Park, Richard began frequenting a small cafe tucked away on 24th Street, near the Mission District. There was nothing particularly special about the place: a few old wooden tables, soft amber lighting, and the smell of cinnamon waffles every morning. But to him, it was the first place where he felt he wasn't being swallowed whole by the shadow of his past. Anna worked the morning shift at the cafe, sometimes behind the register, sometimes at the bar, and sometimes simply as a woman with tired eyes and a smile that never left her face whenever a customer walked in. Richard never sat close. He always chose a quiet corner by the window, where he could silently observe the everyday life of the mother and children he had once carelessly cast aside. He didn't say much, just ordered an espresso and stayed quiet. But Anna knew he was there. She neither forbade nor encouraged him. Everything between them now was fragile, like a thin layer of ice on a winter lake. Beautiful, but breakable. One Tuesday morning, the cafe was quieter than usual. Anna approached his table after finishing a final latte for a takeout order. "I've noticed you here almost every morning," she said, folding a cloth in her hand. "Are you planning to keep doing this forever?" Richard looked up. In the light streaming through the window, his face looked older than his years, lines etched not just by time, but by years haunted by a wrong decision. "I'm not sure," he replied honestly. "I only know that. When I see you and the kids, I feel like there's something unfinished in me." Anna exhaled softly, not a sigh, but the kind of quiet pause from someone who had learned to set emotions aside to carry on with the everyday. "I'm not asking you to make amends," she said. "I didn't raise Carl and Oliver so that one day you could appear and claim to be their father. I only allow this because I don't want them growing up with a hole in their hearts." Richard nodded. "I understand. I'm not here to reclaim any role. I only want to be a small part of their world, if it won't hurt you more." Anna didn't respond. She turned and went back to the counter, resuming her work, leaving Richard alone with thoughts that stretched out like the scent of coffee and the gentle chime of the cafe door opening and closing. A few days later, something small happened, but it was something Richard would never forget. He was standing outside the cafe, about to leave, when a bright little voice called out, "Mister, who are you?" It was Carl, one of the twins. The boy had bright brown eyes and chocolate smeared across his cheeks from a half-eaten muffin in his hand. Richard turned, his heart pounding as if he'd been caught doing something wrong. "I'm a friend of your mom's," he said, trying to muster a natural smile. "Why do you always sit alone?" Carl asked, completely uninhibited, like any other 5-year-old. "Because I like watching people be happy," he answered. And when the boy smiled, Richard felt his heart tighten, tugged by something soft and unshakable. Oliver ran up too, clutching his brother's sleeve. "Do you know how to play chess?" "We're learning." "A little bit," Richard replied, his voice almost catching. "Then play with us tomorrow, okay?" Carl grinned, then pulled his brother along back toward their mother, not seeing the shimmer in Richard's eyes. Anna watched from a distance, her expression softening. She had heard everything, and for the first time she didn't intervene. From that day forward, the brief encounters between Richard and the boys became more frequent. They didn't know who he really was. They only knew him as Uncle Richard, the man who told fairy tales in a weird but funny way, who knew the difference between chess and xianqi, and who sometimes stood quietly, watching them play, as if it was the most precious thing in the world. Anna still kept her distance, but she had started smiling when her children laughed. She no longer flinched when Richard appeared. And sometimes, when night fell, she found herself wondering, am I giving him a chance, or giving myself one? One spring afternoon, as the three of them sat on the grass at Dolores Park, Richard told a fairy tale about a dragon that couldn't breathe fire but could grow flowers. Carl lay sprawled across his lap, Oliver resting his head on his brother's shoulder, both completely absorbed in the story. Anna sat beside them, iced tea in hand, occasionally glancing at Richard, her eyes no longer guarded, but holding a glimmer of acceptance, though no words had yet been spoken. And in that peaceful moment, Richard realized, love, once lost, isn't always something you can find again, but trust, if nurtured day by day, through presence, through patience, and through sincere remorse, can open up a new path, slowly but surely. On a Friday afternoon and at the end of May, as golden sunlight streamed through the branches at Dolores Park, Anna received a call from an unfamiliar number. On the other end, a cold, composed, and commanding female voice. "This is Sylvia Madison, Richard's mother." Anna stood motionless behind the bar, one hand still on the carafe mid-pour. For a moment, the cafe fell into silence, broken only by the hum of the coffee grinder in the background. "We need to meet," the voice continued, "as soon as possible. I know you're raising my grandchildren." 2 days later, they met at an old-fashioned tea house in Pacific Heights, a place unfamiliar to Anna in both geography and atmosphere. Sylvia arrived exactly on time, not a minute early, not a second late. She sat upright, her cool gray eyes framed perfectly under layers of immaculate mascara. Anna didn't come alone. Andrew was with her. Not because she needed backup, but because she knew that facing a woman like Sylvia alone would never be enough. Sylvia wasted no time on pleasantries. She placed a color photo of Carl and Oliver on the table, the very one Richard had sent her after seeing them for the first time. "They look exactly like Richard did when he was a child," she said. "You know that," Anna responded calmly, without evasion. "I do. And I also know that doesn't give you the right to claim children you've never once cared about." Sylvia's lip twitched. Not quite a smile, more like irritation held just below the surface. She reached into her bag, pulled out a folder, and tapped it lightly on the table. "I'm not here to fight for custody. I'm here to negotiate." Anna remained silent. Andrew leaned in slightly, asking, "What exactly do you mean?" Sylvia fixed her gaze on Anna. "I want the boys to carry the Madison name. I will cover all their school fees. I'll establish a trust fund. Their future will be secure. You may continue to raise them, but they must bear the Madison name, as they rightfully should." The room seemed to grow colder, even though the sun outside still blazed. Anna clenched her hands beneath the table. "They are not shields for you to polish the Madison name," she said slowly. "I raised them when no one else was here. Not so you could walk in now and treat me like a placeholder." Sylvia gave a faint smile, her eyes glinting with challenge. "Do you really think you can stop history from repeating itself? No one in my family abandons their own blood, but we also don't let them grow up without structure." Andrew leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but firm. "You didn't come here to make a request. You came to force a decision. But Anna isn't the kind of woman who bows to cold conditions." Sylvia rose from her chair, showing no sign of outrage. "I'll return," she said. "And next time, I won't come with an offer." That evening, Anna sat by the window of her small apartment, watching her 2 sons sleep. Beside her, Andrew poured a cup of ginger tea. Neither spoke for a long while. Finally, Anna said, her eyes still fixed on the 2 small figures curled up under a thin blanket. "I thought I was stronger than this. But when she said those things, I felt afraid." Andrew reached for her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "You have every right to be afraid. But you're not alone." Anna turned to look at him, and for the first time since Richard came back into her life, she allowed herself to lean on someone without feeling weak. 3 days later, Richard stood at her doorstep. His eyes were tired but full of resolve. "My mother spoke to you, didn't she?" he asked. Anna nodded. "She wants to negotiate about the boys." Richard sat down, clasping his hands together. His voice caught in his throat. "I lost you, and I nearly lost my children too. I won't let my mother take them away again. If you'll let me, I want to stand with you, with them." Anna remained silent. For a moment, all the old memories came rushing back. The pain, the betrayal, the silence Richard once chose. But in his eyes now, she no longer saw the man of prestige. She saw a father, asking for a second chance. Finally, she spoke. "If you're going to stand with us this time, don't just stand. Walk with us." That morning, the San Francisco sky was strangely overcast. Gray clouds blanketed the city like a warning. Anna had just finished making a cup of coffee when there was a knock at the door. A thick envelope rested in the mail carrier's hand, its red stamp stark and unmistakable in the top left corner. San Francisco County Court. Notice of legal action. Her hands trembled slightly as she tore the envelope open. The printed text was dense, and the headline struck like a blow. Plaintiff, Sylvia Madison. Subject, petition for legal guardianship of minors Carl and Oliver. Anna stood frozen, as if the ground beneath her had just collapsed. Every emotion caught in her throat. Her heart pounded erratically, and the petition slipped from her trembling fingers, landing softly on the floor. The peaceful years she'd spent with her sons turned out to be nothing more than the calm before a devastating storm. That afternoon, Richard came by. He walked into the apartment like a man who already knew the storm was waiting for him. Anna didn't ask. She simply handed him the letter. He read it tensely, brows furrowed, and then looked up at her. And for the first time in years, shame was written plainly across his face. I didn't think she'd go this far. She doesn't know how to stop, Richard. Just like you didn't. Anna's voice was oddly calm, but beneath that calm was a sea of fire, rising and raging. In the weeks that followed, Anna's life became a relentless battle with the legal system. The court demanded home inspections, financial history, personal references. Sylvia's legal team, an ensemble of the city's top attorneys, prepared a case thicker than a novel. They argued that Anna lacked financial stability, had no biological family connections, no property in her name, and worst of all, was not the biological mother. Sitting at the courtroom table, Anna listened to it all, her eyes never leaving her sons, who sat in the waiting room corner playing with building blocks. She had no mansions to show, no Madison name to flaunt, but she had something no bank statement could provide, a heart that had once promised to give up everything for those two boys. Andrew was always there, seated beside her at every meeting with their attorney. He read files quietly, answered every question about his place in the family. When asked, "What is your relationship to the children?" he simply smiled. "I'm not their biological father, but I'm the one who wakes up in the middle of the night when they cry. I'm the one who taught Carl how to tie his shoes, the one who sat with Oliver, showing him how to write his name. I don't share their DNA, but I'm here, every single day." A special hearing was held. Sylvia arrived in a cream Chanel dress, her face flawless, not a wrinkle in sight, her smile as pristine as a luxury skincare ad. She sat across from Anna and looked her straight in the eye. "I didn't come here out of spite. I only want these boys to have the future they deserve. They are Madisons by blood, and I refuse to let them be raised in a rented apartment in the suburbs by a woman who has nothing but good intentions." Anna said nothing for nearly a full minute. Then she replied slowly, deliberately, "You're right. I don't have anything, but I also don't have to look away in shame every time I look my children in the eye." In a move no one saw coming, Richard stood up during the hearing and submitted a handwritten declaration, renouncing all custodial rights and supporting Anna as the sole legal guardian. "I abandoned their mother once. I will not make the same mistake with my children. Anna has raised them better than anyone else ever could." Sylvia stood frozen. She turned to her son, her lips trembling. "You're turning your back on your family." "No, Mother. I'm choosing what family's supposed to be, love, not control." The day the court announced its ruling, a light rain began to fall. The courtroom fell silent as the judge declared, "Based on the evidence and assessment of the nurturing environment, the court hereby grants full custody of the minors, Carl and Oliver, to Miss Anna Miller. The petitioner's request is denied." Anna broke into tears, not tears of victory, but because, finally, she no longer had to fight to earn the right to be called Mom. That evening, Anna sat on the couch with her two sons, wrapped in a blanket watching cartoons. Carl turned to her and asked, "Mom, you've been smiling a lot today, huh?" "Yes," she replied, smiling gently, "because today, I know for sure I'll never have to be apart from you two again." Oliver whispered, resting his head on her shoulder. "Don't worry, Mommy. We're not going anywhere either." A few weeks after the trial, life in Anna's small apartment gradually returned to its routine. But some things could never be called normal again. Like the way Carl would glance at the door every time someone knocked, or how Oliver would suddenly wrap his arms tightly around her neck before bed and mumble sleepily, "Don't go anywhere, Mom." Some wounds don't always bleed. Sometimes They just linger quietly in a dark corner, waiting for the lightest touch to ache again. One early morning, while mist still clung to the streets, Anna stepped out, leaving the boys in Andrew's care. She carried an envelope, a copy of the custody ruling, and stood before a high-rise building in downtown San Francisco. On the nameplate outside, Richard Madison, Private Legal Office. She didn't need to do this. No one had asked her to come, but she knew in her heart nothing would truly be closed without this final conversation. Richard sat behind his desk, the fatigue etched deep into the lines at the corners of his eyes. When he saw her enter, he stood up abruptly out of habit, or respect, or guilt. She wasn't sure. "I don't expect your forgiveness, Anna. I didn't come to give it," she replied, her voice light as the morning breeze. She placed the envelope on the desk. "I just want you to keep this copy, not as a reminder of the court, but of the chance you missed to be a father in the truest way." Richard said nothing. He looked stunned. Words caught in his throat, and in the end, he only managed a nod. As Anna turned to leave, she heard his voice soft and cracked with emotion. "Thank you for loving them, even when I didn't deserve it." Elsewhere, in a grand and silent penthouse, Sylvia sat alone on her designer sofa. No more camera flashes, no reporters, no raised glasses or polite applause. Everything she had once used to define her worth, power, wealth, legacy, now sat as silent as the room around her. An old housekeeper placed an envelope on the table in front of Sylvia. There was no return address, just neat, childlike handwriting, to Grandma, from Carl and Oliver. Her hand trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a photo of the two boys beaming brightly in a garden, with a note, "We're okay, Grandma, so don't worry. If one day you want to visit, Mom says you're always welcome. But we hope you'll learn to love for real, like Mom does." Sylvia sat still for a long time. And then, tears the kind she had always hidden beneath perfect layers of mascara finally fell, soft and real. That night, Anna sat on the balcony beside Andrew. The world around them was quiet, broken only by distant traffic and the warm glow from neighboring homes. "I don't hate them anymore," Anna said, her gaze distant. "That doesn't mean I've forgotten, just that I don't want to carry them in my heart, like a scar that never fades." Andrew gave her hand a gentle squeeze. She rested her head on his shoulder and exhaled. "I used to think I had to win to protect the kids, but now I realize what they needed most was for me to be myself, not a bitter mother, but a woman strong enough to forgive." The next day, Carl and Oliver came running home from school, proudly waving a drawing of their family, 3 people, and a man standing beside them. "Mom, I drew Uncle Andrew too. He's a good guy, right?" Carl asked. Anna smiled, pulling them into a hug. "Yes, Uncle Andrew is a good man. And I think I'm learning how to be better too because of you two." One early spring afternoon, Golden Gate Park was bathed in sunlight. Carl and Oliver chased each other around crimson-leaf trees, their laughter ringing like tiny bells, scattered across the warm grass. Anna sat on a stone bench, her hand in Andrew's. A slim silver ring sparkled on her ring finger, quiet, but full of promise. "Do we need a ceremony?" Andrew had asked the week before. "No," Anna had smiled. "I just need a home, 2 kids, and you beside me. That's all the wedding I'll ever need." They'd signed the marriage papers on a rainy morning. No gown, no cake, no guests but the witness. But when Andrew rested his hand on Anna's shoulder, she knew she had just signed into a new chapter, one free of shadows and blame. Only love steady, mature, and gentle enough to carry a whole life forward. Months later, at a small charity event for orphaned children, Anna was the opening speaker. In her hands was a speech written from lived experience. Her voice echoed warmly across the room. "I used to believe that a perfect family was what made children happy. But now I know what children need most isn't perfection. It's the full presence of love. I'm not the best mother, but I was there when they were hurt, when they were scared, when they didn't understand why Mom and Dad weren't together anymore. And I learned this from my own children. Forgiveness isn't a gift we give others. It's a way to set ourselves free." The room was silent. Nods, red eyes. Then applause, not thunderous, but enough for Anna to know she had done the right thing. That night, as Andrew read the last page of a bedtime story, Carl and Oliver rushed to tuck the blanket around their mother. "You have to sleep early, so you'll look pretty tomorrow," Carl said, eyes gleaming. "'Cause tomorrow you're on TV," Oliver chimed in proudly. Anna laughed, pulling them both close, and kissed their foreheads. I don't need to be pretty. With you two, I already shine. Elsewhere, in Richard's quiet home, he sat alone, watching Anna's speech on TV. Under the soft yellow light, his eyes lingered on her final words. Forgiveness isn't a gift we give others. It's a way to set ourselves free. He turned off the TV, looked up at the ceiling, and whispered, "You've found your way out, and I'm still trying to find mine." Finally, Anna sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like falling stars. Andrew brought her a cup of hot ginger tea, set it in her hands, then sat beside her. "You're stronger every day," he said. "No," she shook her head softly, leaning against him. "I'm just learning to be gentle with myself." Through the glass, Carl and Oliver could be seen playing in the living room, their Lego ships sailing a world of color and imagination. Anna smiled and placed a hand over her heart, where old pain once lived, now filled with something new: love. The lesson that remains: you don't need a perfect family to be happy. You just need a love that is real enough, patient enough, and gentle enough to hold space for the wounds. If one day, the person who once vowed to protect you walks away because you can't bear children, what would you do? Have you ever wondered, in a world where a person's worth is sometimes measured by their ability to reproduce or serve a legacy, is there still room for love and respect? The story you're about to hear is not just a journey of rediscovering oneself after a painful fall. It's proof that sometimes, loss is life's way of giving us another chance, one that is stronger and more deserving. Stay with us until the end, and don't forget to share your thoughts. If it were you, would you choose to forgive or walk away forever? And does someone who once abandoned you truly deserve a second chance?